Hey, what's going on guys? It's Splash here, and today I'm bringing you another Diablo 4 video. In today's video, we actually have my personal favorite Sorcerer build, which is the Blizzard Sorcerer. It's a overall really fun build. You pretty much just, speed through everything in the game, and everything just dies behind you. So the way this build works is we're scaling our glacial aspect, which is the ice spikes from our blizzard. So it's not the blizzard itself doing damage, it's actually the ice spikes. But overall, this is a really fun build. I think it's going to be one of the best for the Gauntlet when that releases, and I will be making adjustments for the Gauntlet just to focus on strategy and speed, since it's not really difficulty oriented. It's not tier 100, it's like tier 70 level. So this is my current build that I'm using with the gameplay that you see here, and I'll go ahead and show you guys my skill tree, the Paragon, the gear, and some more gameplay. So I hope you guys enjoy. Alrighty, let's get right into it. Let me show you guys the skill tree that we're using here. Alright, so starting off, just put 2 points into our basic skill here, Firebolt. Going down here, I put 3 points into Frozen Orb, and we're going to go with the Greater Frozen Orb for the vulnerability. This is how we're applying vulnerability in the build, just because with Sorc, the exploit glyph doesn't give you vulnerability, so we're going to use the Frozen Orb, and this is actually the enchantment we're using, and Firebolt is the other enchantment we're using, just so we can apply burning to everything and dip into some, damage to burning. Going down here, I did grab the Devastation, 3 points into that for extra mana, 3 points into Flame Shield, and then Shimmering Flame Shield just so we heal when we pop it. Going to Teleport, I put an extra point into Teleport just to reduce the cooldown slightly, and then I went with Shimmering Teleport so that we get the damage reduction. 1 point into Elemental Attunement, 3 out of 3 in the Glass Cannon just for the extra damage. Going down here, 3 points into Frost Nova. You could use this as your vulnerability as well, but I actually have it set up to just give us mana. Even though with the build, the way we have it set up, we don't really need this, so if you really want, you could take a point out of this and put it elsewhere if you'd like. It's not really that needed. Coming down here to the Conjuration, I have a 1 point in the Lightning Spear just so we can fill up our bar. However, you could also take this point out and really use whatever you'd like. You could use Hydra, Ice Blades, or something else if you want. But I just like the Lightning Spear because it also applies vulnerability. And it's just nice to have because we are using some things that give us elemental damage. So if we're using cold, lightning, and fire, we'll get that extra 15% multiplicative. So it is nice just to pop that just so you make sure you have that up at all times. And then over here, align the elements 1 point, and 3 out of 3 on Mana Shield, 3 out of 3 on Protection. These are both very good for Sorc, since we are pretty squishy on Sorc, so this is just going to help with, defensive damage reduction overall. Conjuration Mastery, 3 out of 3, just because whenever we pop our Lightning Spear, it's just going to give us that extra damage bonus. Nothing major, but it is something. Going over to Blizzard, so this is going to be our main source of damage. However, Blizzard itself is not what we're scaling. We're actually scaling the ice spikes that form from the aspect. I think it's called the glacial aspect. So that's why I don't have 5 out of 5 points into Blizzard, because buffing this is going to buff Blizzard's damage, but most of our damage is not coming from Blizzard, it's coming from the ice spikes. So you do want to put points into Blizzard, but you don't need to max it out. I went Enhanced and then to the Mage's Blizzard, that way the duration's increased. Over here, since we are using the Firebolt enchant, put 1 point into Inner Flames just so we can max out our Devouring Blaze, and I also have an extra 3 points from the Amulet. Going down here to the ultimate skills, I'm using Deep Freeze. I just put 3 points into it. Really, the only reason I use this is because if you read here, it resets your non-ultimate cooldowns. So if you're ever in a situation where you're out of mana and you're on all cooldowns, you could pop this really quick, end it, and then you just have all of your skills back up. So it is nice to use it in that sense. Over here we do have Permafrost, 3 out of 3, 3 out of 3 into Hoarfrost, and 3 out of 3 into Icy Touch, just because this is giving us all damage to cold, chilled enemies, which is pretty much everything. Over here, 1 point into Fiery Surge, 1 into Endless, and 3 out of 3 into Warmth. This is just going to heal us very minimal for every enemy that's burning, which is going to be everything. So again, just helping us with our defenses and just making it so we're a little bit more tanky. And then for our key passive, we are using Isu's Ferocity. I believe this is still bugged, so even though we're not critting with fire skills, because we're just applying burn, this still affects our Blizzard, our Ice Spikes. So I think it's working like not really how it's supposed to, or they wanted it to work that way and they just haven't misworded. But either way, this works with any other skill. So that's why we're using it here in our skill tree. And then this is what I have on my bar. We got the Lightning Spear, Deep Freeze, Flame Shield, Teleport, Frost Nova, and then Blizzard, which, like I said, is going to be our main skill with the Glacial aspect. So that's the skill tree. And like I said, there's some points that you could kind of just put elsewhere if you'd like. Like you could take one out of Lightning Spear. You would lose the damage on Conjuration, but you know that's completely up to you. Same thing with the Frost Nova. If you don't really need the mana, you could take that out, put it elsewhere. So, um, yeah, you could get kind of creative with this if you'd like. But that's how I have it set up for this. So, there you guys go. Alright, now moving over to the Paragon board. So for the starting board, I went ahead with Territorial. We're really just using this glyph for the damage reduction, but it does give us a little bit of damage to close. Going on to our second board, we're going to use the Ceaseless Conduit board. And I went with the Elementalist glyph here. Like I said before, we're using Fire, Cold, Lightning, so this is just an extra 15% multiplicative damage. Moving on to our third board, we're going to go with the Icefall board. We're going to grab this legendary node for the extra damage to vulnerable. And for the glyph here, we're going to go with the Control glyph. Now, we're going to save this board for later, and we're just going to move over here and grab the Searing Heat board. And we're going to use the Destruction glyph here. This is going to buff our crit damage with our Ice Spikes, as well as, you know, some fire resistance if you need it. So that's very helpful there. Going down here, we're going to grab the Frigid Fate board. And for the glyph socket, we're going with Flame Feeder. This is just going to increase our damage to burning enemies, which is everything. And then Frigid Fate is nice because it's just extra multiplicative damage based on your damage with cold, which is also non-physical damage. So the more non-phys damage you have, it's going to buff this bonus right here. And I'm going to be honest, I could have a way higher bonus, but a lot of my gear is not min-maxed. I could have done the Paragon board a little bit better to get a bit more. But honestly, with the Gauntlet coming out, I'm not really trying to spec into like just full DPS. I'm trying to go for speed and just kind of trying to strategize this the best way I can for the Gauntlet to come out, and I might switch some things up. Maybe increase this bonus, might go down, but I'm really just focusing on speed for the Gauntlet when that comes out. So that's why I didn't really spec into full damage. But if you guys are wanting to do that, you definitely could switch up the board a little bit to grab some more non-phys damage to buff this bonus, or you could just get some more damage to cold if you'd like. But now we're going to come back here and we're going to go down here and put the Reinforced glyph into the board Enchantment Master. So Reinforced is going to give us more damage reduction as well while we have a barrier, which is pretty much all the time because a lot of our skills give us a barrier. So a lot of damage reduction in this build for sure. And then for our last board, we're going to grab the Burning Instinct board, and for our glyph, we're going with the glyph, the Stalagmite. This is going to boost our Ice Spike damage as well as give us extra crit chance with the Ice Spikes. So this is probably the most important glyph because like I said, our damage isn't coming from Blizzard, it's coming from the Ice Spikes. So the more damage you have in here, the more damage output you're going to see with your Blizzard. But this is the way I have it set up. You could, if you really want to, if you want more damage on the Ice Spikes, you could probably switch these two boards. Just put this one up here, and then you could go ahead and put the Searing Heat one down here. And that might help you out a little bit, just giving you a little bit more damage because you can probably hit these nodes. These two rare nodes right here, Cinders and Smoldering Embers. But I haven't actually tested that. The other thing is my gear's not min-maxed all the way, so I don't have like perfect all-stat rolls, perfect dexterity rolls. So there's that too. But if you guys really want to, you could switch these two boards. It might give you a little bit extra damage if that's what you're looking for. But nonetheless, this build solo play is going to pretty much clear all content, and it's going to be very fast for the Gauntlet as well. So That's the Paragon board. Again, if you guys want to copy this directly and you don't want to pause the video, there's a link in the description to the build guide, like to the planner. Alright guys, and let me show you the gear that I'm rocking and the aspects, where to put them. So, let's start off. If you have the Uber Uniques for your helmet, you're going to want to run Shaco. If you don't have the Shaco, best in slot would probably just be a legendary helmet with like intelligence, total armor, max life, cooldown, and you could run the snow guard aspect, which is going to give you a little bit of damage reduction while you're in your blizzard and when you leave it. So that's a good alternative if you don't have Shaco. Or what you could do is you could run Godslayer Crown, which is also really good. This is what I use for bossing, but because I have Shaco, this is usually what I'm using all the time. So going on to the chest piece, we got the Juggernaut aspect. You're going to want something similar to this, 3 DR rolls, max life. I have DR from close, DR from distant, DR from burning. Instead of the DR from distant, I'd probably rather have just regular flat DR there. Going on to the gloves, we're using the conceded aspect. That's going to give us extra damage while we have a barrier, which we're always applying barrier with a lot of our skills like flame shield, teleport. A lot of these things give us a barrier. These gloves are terrible. What I would recommend is maybe attack speed, crit chance, lucky hit to restore primary resource, something of that sort, and then maybe like intelligence. So attack speed, crit chance, lucky hit to restore a resource, and then intelligence on the gloves would be best in slot in my opinion. These are just really bad gloves. I'm really only using them because I don't have any other gloves that are better than this that have like high crit chance and attack speed. So until I get better gloves, this is kind of what I'm stuck with. And like I said, conceded aspect on the gloves. Going to the pants, Tibalt's Will, these are going to be best in slot just because they're going to give you a huge increase in damage. But also we have 3 skills that are applying Unstoppable. So we're constantly going to have that extra 50 primary resource, which is huge for this build because it is starved on mana. So it's heavily reliant on mana. So the more mana you have, the more resource gen you have, the more smooth this build is going to feel. Also, I just want to make note real quick. This is not a good leveling build at all. And the reason being is because this glacial aspect, at least for me, I didn't get my first drop until like I was level 70. And this whole build, like I had explained before, is scaled off of this aspect. So whatever blizzard aspect you get to drop, you ideally want it to be like a 925 so that the aspect is like the highest roll possible, and then you want to put this on the amulet. But moving on, after the Tibalts, you do want to have Isu's Heirloom. This is going to give us a pretty good crit chance. You also have mana cost reduction on these and movement speed, so all around good unique to have. For our dagger, you're going to want to use a dagger over a wand just because of the damage to close. I have all stat, intelligence, crit, and damage to close. This is ideally all 4 rolls that you would want. And I'm using the frozen tundra aspect just for the last piece of this where it says your ice spikes have a 50% increased explosion radius. So that's really the only reason we use the tundra aspect. Going on to the amulet, like I said, our whole build is scaled off of this aspect. So you ideally just want the highest roll possible on this aspect. So you're going to want to farm dungeons or vaults that are going to drop you 925s, so you can look for a perfect roll aspect like this one. This one's not even a max roll. I think the highest it goes is, let's see if I have a 925 one. Oh, maybe it is 2413, and then when you put it on the amulet it goes up. So okay, so no, actually right here. Or no, that's a frozen tundra. Yeah, so the glacial aspect, it looks like for 925 the highest is 2413, and then obviously when you put it on the amulet you get a 50% bonus. So I'm not 100% sure if this one's a max roll or not. I think I'm waiting for a better amulet. But anyways, for the rolls on the amulet, I have movement speed, total armor, mana cost, and devouring blaze ranks. The reason I have total armor is because I've been pushing high tier dungeons, and that's what I needed to be armor capped. However, if you're not pushing high tiers and maybe you're just focusing on Gauntlet or speed, you could get rid of the total armor, and I would personally go with cooldown reduction and then keep everything else, the movement speed, the mana cost, and the +3 ranks of Devouring Blaze. Going down to the Ring of Starless Skies is going to be best in slot just because it's really amazing as far as the rolls and the mana cost reduction that it gives you. But if you don't have a Ring of Starless Skies, Blue Rose is going to be the next best in slot right here. Going down to our next ring, Talrasha's. This is also going to be best in slot. Huge damage increase. We get cooldown, resource gen, and the non-fizz damage. Also resistance to all elements, so it helps us hit the resistance caps over here. So, very good to have that. And then for your offhand, ideally you want something similar to this: crit chance, mana cost reduction, cooldown reduction, and then instead of life on kill, I would much rather have resource gen, but honestly, this offhand is just like the crit chance, the cooldown, the mana cost were just such high rolls that I'd have a perfect 4 out of 4 roll, but all the rolls are low, and I'd still rather use this just because, you know, max crit chance, max cooldown, very hard to come by. And then for the aspect, I believe it's called the Ancient Flame aspect, which just boosts our attack speed when using the Isu's Ferocity Key passive, which we are using. But one thing I will say is if you don't have a lot of resource gen, say from like Harley Quinn crest or, you know, Talrasha's, you know, if you just don't have a lot of resource gen in the build, having this extra attack speed might feel kind of clunky because you're going to be running out of mana a lot, especially if you're not utilizing your cooldowns and getting that mana back from the Tibalt's Will. So if you feel like it's a little clunky and you're just constantly running out of mana using this, you could put a different aspect here, maybe something like Edge Masters, just to give you a little bit more damage, rather than boosting your attack speed. For me, you know, with the way I have my build set up, it works perfectly fine, but I also have, you know, Starless Skies, which brings my mana cost down. I have mana cost on my Amulet, and I have resource gen from Shaco, as well as resource gen on Talrasha's. So that's what I would say about the build. And let's go ahead and show you guys some gameplay of it. Alright, we'll just do this tier 94. It's like the highest that we have. Alrighty, let's go. Yeah, the only downside with this build is that everything pretty much dies behind you as you just throw down these blizzards, so you kind of have to backtrack if you like want the loot, which kind of sucks, but nonetheless, if you're just trying to farm and speedrun stuff, this is a really fun build because you could just run through dungeons, you could just run through vaults, and it's just honestly just a very fun play style. If you've been playing Barb all season, just bonking everything, it does feel nice to kind of switch it up and go for something like this that has a lot of speed. But as you guys can see, I mean, I really don't run out of mana ever, and if I do, I just pop like my Flame Shield, my Teleport, which will proc my Tibalt's, and it'll just give me more mana. So, yeah, that's pretty much how the build goes, and you know, I'll just let you guys watch the gameplay. Alrighty, that's pretty much the run for you guys. And once the Gauntlet releases, I'm going to be speccing this build a little bit more for speed, and I'm actually going to create a variation that uses the Raiment Chest, and I'm going to switch up the build a little bit to, just try to strategize specifically for the Gauntlet to, make the leaderboards, possibly do like a top 10 run. So we'll see what we can do, but I'm not going to be making any builds until after the Gauntlet releases because I'm going to have to like test it, see how it is. But if you guys are looking for specific builds for the Gauntlet so you can speedrun it, I will be adjusting this build as well as the bar build that I put a video on. Um, so we'll see what we can do there. But nonetheless, I appreciate you guys watching the video. Feel free to comment down below, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Helps me out a lot. And let me know if you guys want to see any other videos in the future or any specific builds, and I'll see what I can do for you. But thanks again.